Hi, my name is Bailey and I watch a lot of booktube. Hello friends and welcome to my channel. In honor of Battleathon, I am really on the hunt for some 5-star books. I mean, obviously in honor of, living and being a reader in this world. I like to read books that I like and I like to read books that change my life. So I feel like one of the smartest approaches for me personally at this time, I figured I have got some favorite booktubers, okay? I've got some booktubers that have given me some really good recommendations that I feel very positive about. As someone who works from home, reading vlogs are kind of my day-to-day watch time staple. I freaking love reading vlogs. So over the time of watching booktube, I have not only picked up some really good recommendations from people that I really want to read, but I've also picked up some people that I think our tastes semi-align. What better way to find 5 stars than to read other people's 5-star books? So I have selected a couple booktubers who I'm absolutely obsessed with and who I also am absolutely obsessed with the recommendations that they give, so much so that I really desperately want to pick from some of the books that they have given 5 stars. So I kind of on a whim, I started with my bestie Tori, my soul sister Tori. I freaking love Tori, obviously. I figured I would start with her because she and I generally have pretty similar reading tastes, although we did disagree about our opinions on the Book of Azrael recently, but I'll let it slide. So a couple days ago, I went ahead and DM'd her and I said, if you had to pick a book that you gave 5 stars to make me read, what would it be? And she said, names, I don't know, we have so many overlapping books. What books haven't we both read? This is about the point where I realized it would probably be a smart idea to give them a couple books to choose from as opposed to just being like, hi, make me read a 5-star of yours. So we circled back. She said, okay, first of all, read House of Bane and Blood, You Will Pass Away, and Enchantment of Ravens. Wait, Blood and Steel? You haven't read that? No, I haven't because I keep trying to read it and I just keep like putting it off for something else. And she said, Gropey Sofa Rule, what did you think I was gonna tell you? If not Blood and Steel, that's my lifeblood. Fair. From what I've heard, people really like this series, but then the intro book of it is not necessarily as life-changing, but then the series itself is life-changing. Good reads. Tori, what did you rate it? I remember watching her very first vlog about it, which is what initially put it on my radar. I know that she obviously liked it a crap ton because it's her lifeblood, but I don't remember exactly what she rated it. Okay, she gave it 4 stars. So this is kind of technically breaking the rules for this video because I wanted to read people's 5 stars, but I know that the whole series as a whole for her is a 5 stars, so we're counting it. It's also on my physical TBR, so it's definitely time. It's been past time that I read it, but today we're making it officially time. It's been past time. How could it be officially time if it's been past? You get the point. We're gonna read Blood and Steel. I have read Slaying the Shadow Prince. It was closer to like a 4.5, but obviously on Goodreads I put it as a 4. It was so freaking good. I was obsessed. I kind of wish that I hadn't read that book first because I feel like part of the reason that I've delayed, I have this weird thing with like, especially with like parents and kids, where like you'll have the parents books and then it'll be the kids books moving forward, having the kids be adults. It just doesn't quite click with me unless I give a good amount of time in between reading the books. That's not really the case with this one. Wilder was technically very young in the first book, and so I think giving a little bit of time has definitely helped me pick up on the fact that now Wilder is our big baddie main character, and I'm so excited. I feel like I'm going to be entering the whole series in the mind space of a standalone that's like in the same series, but also not the series itself. So we're going to see how that approach may or may not change our opinions. However, I'm so excited to read this book. I think my chest just palpitated. I'm so excited. So we are going to jump into reading this book this week. I'm gonna ask Cassidy, it covers with Cassidy, for her pick, and I'm really hoping, I'm gonna make her choose in between Quicksilver and House of Bane and Blood. I already have the audiobook for House of Bane and Blood, so I'm like kind of hoping she picks that. We'll see. Point being, I'm gonna jump into this and I will update you whenever I officially have a reading update on Blood and Steel. I cannot believe I'm saying this out loud. It's been so long since I've had this book that I haven't actually started it. I've owned this book since March. I think it was March because I actually read Spark of the Everflame in February, and then I actually bought it in March. So I've had this book since March. And I've been really aggressively eyeballing it since March, and I'm so excited to finally be actually eyeballing it. Do I want to annotate this? I feel like in honor of Tori, I should annotate it, but like also, am I in an annotating mood? I don't know. Maybe I'll just highlight in my Kindle and then transfer annotations over. That's probably what I'm gonna do. Okay, go team go. Hello friends, am I pretending that it wasn't just like the wackiest Monday? My hair's in the wackiest state to represent that Monday. We're not pretending like that happened. Also, am I also in the exact same place as I was the last update? Because it's like the only corner of my house is clean at the moment. In fact, yes. Point being, my life is kind of a mess at the moment. However, my reading life is perfection. So I DM'd Cass and I got a recommendation that I was really kind of hoping that she was going to tell us. I went ahead and asked her in between House of Bane and Blood and Quicksilver. Listen, I still want to read Quicksilver, like a lot. Did I really want to read House of Bane and Blood just a little bit more? Yes. And did I read it? Yes. Did I give it 5 stars? Yeah, I did. I am obsessed with this book. I mean, obviously I gave it 5 stars. This book was perfect. It was, I mean, obviously, again, 5 stars. If you haven't heard of what this book is about, it has been described to me as several things. I would pitch it as kind of like a Peaky Blinders meets fantasy romance situation. You've got these people in this urban, it's not really urban, it's kind of more, think like early 1900s. It's a city, but in a city, like not in a modern time period, closer like early to first quarter of the 1900s, which is interesting. I've not read anything else like this, but you've got technically like 3 dueling families. We're watching 2 characters, our main female character and our main male character from 2 rival families. So we first meet Camilla. She is basically getting sold off into marriage to save her family company, and she can do nothing about it but just like kind of accept her fate, and she's just gonna go out for a night on the town and just like celebrate her last night of being a normal human being. She's not gonna like tear it up, but she's definitely gonna go hit a bar and get a drink, right? She happens to meet a certain little character named Nico. Whoopsie daisies. They happen to become very fast obsessed with each other, and it's very much so fast burn. They don't do anything, but it's fast burn in the sense that like they connect really quickly, really early on, which as a slow burn lover for me, I still liked it because you basically find out she's getting married to this other man, and that can't possibly work, right? So they're not like set up to actually be together. They're not actually hooking up, getting down to business from the get-go, but they are definitely like instantly connected. And then you kind of figure out who these characters are, their identities are revealed to each other, and then you've got the enemies to lovers set up. You also have a marriage of convenience that it truly was so wonderful. I love marriage of convenience. I've rarely read it in a fantasy romance setting, and it hits like so good, especially between 2 characters who are very boldly confident in what they want from this world, and so they're not really like pretending for other people in this marriage. The families of these 2 characters know that they're very much so just like set up to be together. They're not actually in love, and so they're not really having to act out like the fake dating and like proving to other people. There's one particular scene that isn't good despite that, but they're getting to like meet each other's families. They're getting to meet each other where they're at. Neither of them are pretending that they're just in love with each other for really many other people, and so they're really able to break down to each other like who they actually are, and it is just quite good. They both have some separate goals that they're not really telling each other about, that you're just like kind of waiting for the whole shoe to drop, and it dropped, and it was great. It was so great. The banter was quite good. Again, you have an enemies to lover situation in which they are just like bickering at each other the whole time, and it's fantastic. The setting was really interesting. I thought, I've not read anything that's set up to be, I've heard it set up to be as like more of a steampunk situation, which like it kind of is. It's just different. It's not a fantasy romance. The magic system is definitely a bit different than other books. I don't feel like it was necessarily hard to wrap my brain around. It took me a couple explanations. Like the author hints at it, and then they hinted it again, and then it's hinted at again, and by that 3rd time you're like, oh yeah, totally. But just because it's not your like normal fantasy romance that you would like kind of commonly expect it to be, that like took me a second, which I kind of liked a lot. And there's definitely some reveals that happen at the end of the book. The last line of this book before the epilogue hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm just so excited to read book 2. I'm not going to immediately jump into book 2 because we do have some other books that we want to read first. However, I read this book in basically one sitting, kind of. I remembered from when Cassidy read this in her reading vlog that she read it in one sitting. I wasn't necessarily prepared to read it in one sitting also. I read it within 24 hours. The 2 sittings that I technically read it in 3 sittings if you want to think of it that way. I ended up making a quick little 45-minute road trip situation to go meet my parents because I picked up an auction item for my dad. It was this whole thing. But I was in the car, so I listened to the audiobook for the first couple chapters, and then I came back, I sat down, and I binged the absolute crap out of this book. And then I was starving, and I didn't have any food in the house just yet because I hadn't gone grocery shopping in a while. So then I had to go get groceries. I came back, I was reading this book until I fell asleep, and then I woke up this morning at like 5:30 because I fell asleep so early, which was kind of weird, but then I woke up and I read it immediately. So all in all, I read this book in less than 24 hours, so I'm counting it as read it in a day. I totally could have seen myself reading it when sitting. This book is only 416 pages. Is still a good amount of pages. However, it's a fan row. Fan rows get pretty chunky. 416 is pretty short, so it makes sense that you would read this in a shorter period of time. Also, the writing is just very compulsively readable. I'm about to sit down and edit for like several million hours, and then I'm going to shower and wash my hair for the evening, so we're just not really putting any effort into the appearance. Also, it's Monday, and I wore pajamas all day at work today, and I finally changed out into my new Fabled Waco t-shirt that I got. It says fastest reader in the West, which you can't see. Actually iconic. So all in all, this book was absolutely fantastic. I am so glad that I took this recommendation from Cassidy. First of all, thank you, Cass. I literally lived for this book. I totally understand why you read it in one sitting. I was sad. It was real good. Clearly because I gave it 5 stars, but like also Cass gave it 5 stars, and like I see the hype. And also I'm counting this as kind of a halfway Tori rec because Tori also said to read this book, and obviously she wouldn't steer me wrong. So speaking of Tori, this morning I woke up at 5:30. For some reason, crawling into bed in my Kindle when it's dark outside, I just immediately go to sleep. So I went to sleep at like 10 o'clock. I woke up at 5:30 this morning. I'm really not sure where that came from. And I wasn't really quite tired, and I just kept thinking about going back to read this book. So instead of going back to bed for like 3 hours, I decided to finish this book. And then I had a good hour before I was supposed to start work. So I decided to pick up. It's funny to me that I start off this vlog with saying that I'm going to read Bone and Steel, and then it becomes not the first book that I read, because it feels very thematic of how long it's taken me to get to this book. And I am so glad that I finally picked it up. Okay, so I had mentioned previously that one of my like teeny tiny fears going into this book was the fact that Wilder wasn't gonna feel like big baddie enough to me, because I saw him be like, not talked down to, but he was the rookie kind of whenever I read Slaying the Shadow Prince. No. I think when we meet him in this book, he very much so is still giving very much so like large and in charge and intimidating and big bad male character. I'm in it. I'm so in it right now. And I think because I read Slaying the Shadow Prince, I feel like I was dropped into a world that I have already been into. So I'm very curious when I'm going to end up reading this book. I'm not very far into this. I think I'm like somewhere around the 27 page mark. Not very far at all, but the thing that I was kind of baby nervous about is not a problem. And I am just literally so excited to read this book right now. And I'm thrilled. It's currently August 12th. I have read and finished 2 books this month so far. Both of them are 5 stars, so we're definitely, I keep telling myself we're going with quality over quantity, but I clearly need to get some reading more in, and completely binge reading yesterday and this morning doesn't really count as like regular reading habitually situations. I also have to be nice to myself because I did take like a 4-day weekend, fully 4-day weekend out of town, so I wasn't really doing any of that. But point being, it may be a couple days before I next talk to you, but like hopefully not, because I'm literally so excited to get into reading this book, and I'm just having a great time. It was in fact a couple days later that I am finally updating you, because I this past week ended up going on a very last minute work trip to Florida, which is fun, but it also was just like a whole lot. So escapism fully went into effect, meaning I both finished Blood and Steel. I also happened to finish another book that we will talk about here in a second, but first of all, this book was immaculate. I didn't quite associate the fact that being able to read this book was just going to feel like returning to the world, and just like I had already done all of the prep work of learning all the world building previously, so being able to just hop into this book, I was very much so just able to focus on the story, the plotline, the characters. This right here is basically my kind of fantasy romance in which you got some big plot that's looming in the background. You kind of are just starting to introduce to the characters. You have got obviously the romance, which is, it's there, but it's not necessarily the main focus until the end. But then you also have somebody who's entering into a new environment, so you're getting to kind of experience that with them. You're getting to see all kinds of friendships that are forming, both from the perspective of Thea and her previous female friendships that were just so supportive and wholesome, and just so, I don't know, it was a thing that I ended up really loving about this story. But then she also was coming into this new role as a shield bearer and making friends in that arena of her life. But then at the same time, she wasn't necessarily ditching every other friend. She was able to like create a community around her as she goes into this world. If you have read A Court of Silver Flames, the plot line for this very first book is very similar to that, in which she's training. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of traveling scenes. If you like traveling scenes, here you go. If you don't like them, you're probably one of the people that gave this book a 3-star, because there is quite a few traveling scenes. I personally love those scenes because I feel like you're getting to draw out some character development with some proximity journey while you're kind of accomplishing the goal in the background, but at the same time, these characters are really able to kind of be stuck with each other and have to figure out each other, and I love those kinds of moments. This book was packed with those moments. There were parts that I felt like I was reading A Court of Silver Flames, and the fact that they do all of this training, they create all of these found family friendships, and then they go into this trial situation. The minutia of that plot is not the same, but you're kind of getting the overall theme, but then you're launching off into the rest of the series. So I'm definitely so freaking excited to read the rest of the series. This book was kind of a surprising, very, very easy 5-star for me, because I was a little hesitant going into it, like I had mentioned like a million times, because I so was like, I don't know what's up. It was great. So I had also kind of figured that I would give this either a 3 or a 4-star, because I've seen so many people give this particular book a 3 or a 4-star and then continue on to give books throughout the series 5 stars as they get into the series. For me, I think I was just really very much so in the mood for something exactly like this. I think the mood reading timing hit it exactly correctly. But then also I had already read technically the prequel coming into this, so it felt like I was just returning and getting in the style of story that is very much so for me. I love a good traveling scene. I love all the training scenes. I love all of the found family and friendships and all of the emotions. I love the style of romance. There was a moment while Thea and Wilder were traveling and he taught her how to shoot a bow. And whenever she goes back and she tries to do it as a shield bearer, someone's like, I know somebody else that has that weird style of shooting a bow. He's not known for sharing his methods. And it's like, he shared his methods with only her, and it was just very cutesy. So, reading a book that Tori absolutely is obsessed with this series. She's obsessed with this series for a very good reason. I can only imagine what's coming next. So, thank you very much, Tori, for recommending this book to me. I freaking loved it, obviously. I can't wait to read the rest of this series, and I think you should also read it. Thank you so much. Moving on. So, while escapism was full in effect, and also procrastinating packing, because I absolutely hate packing. I don't know why I do this every single time I end up traveling somewhere. I try to pack like a day or 2 days beforehand, and then I end up still taking the full time, and then I end up staying up way too late the night before I leave. And that's, you know, never been something that I've done every single time I've ever traveled. So I finished Blood and Steel last Saturday, kind of earlier in the day, and I was like, you know what I could do? Instead of packing tomorrow because I leave Monday, why don't I just keep reading? And so I did. So I went ahead and DM'd Rachel. And you guys, obviously I couldn't do a Reading Booktubers favorite books as a romantasy reader without consulting the queen herself, Rachel at Raven-Haired Readers. So I went through her 5 stars on Goodreads. Oddly enough, I say oddly enough as if I probably don't take 90% of my recommendations from her like everyone else on the internet does. I have read a very large chunk of the 5 stars that she has on her Goodreads. So of the 5 stars that she had on her Goodreads that I hadn't read yet, there were essentially 3. Number 1 of them being A Dowry of Blood. I know that this is kind of an OG Rachel favorite that I have had my eyes on for a really hot minute, and I'm just so curious about it. Number 2, Project Hail Mary. I have been so freaking excited about this one because, as we all know, I freaking love Red Rising, and so doing something else kind of sci-fi oriented while also being able to have like more humor. I do have a physical copy of this, and I was like, ooh, it'd be a good idea to read something off my backlist. So I figured that could be an option. And then our last and final option was Quicksilver by Callie Hart, which is actually Rachel's most recent 5-star read. And if you have been anywhere on the internet recently, you would know that Quicksilver has been everywhere on the internet. So I was very excited about literally any of these books. So I felt like I was in good hands regardless of the 3 that she was going to choose. So I went ahead and asked, and she decided to go with Quicksilver by Callie Hart, and I was kind of in the background, kind of secretly hoping that that was going to win. I feel like all of the books, from what I have been asking people to pick for me to read, I feel like everybody's picked the one that I wanted them to pick. So now I'm like, did I kind of rig this? Maybe, but I don't really care because I ended up with yet another 5-star. I cannot believe that of the 3 books that I read in this vlog, all 3 of them were 5 stars. After coming from this year where I had 2 5 stars up until I think like May, I had so few 5 stars, and then all of a sudden I have all of them, and I'm not complaining one single bit. So, Quicksilver by Callie Hart. Let's talk about this book. Donde está mi Kindle? Bien pregunta. One of them located. I am kind of a diva and I have 2 Kindles. One of them being an Oasis, but the battery on this one just does not last for anything. So during Prime Day before last, I think I ended up getting a Signature Paperwhite. And I like the Paperwhite better for general, just like walking around. When I'm laying in bed and reading, the Oasis still has my heart. So I've been switching back and forth lately, and I feel like such a diva, and I You know, it's just who I am at this point. So while Blood and Steel very much so felt kind of like a initial first book in the series where there was plot, but it wasn't just like this most epic, crazy, super involved plot that's ever existed. It was very like kind of get you into the story so that way you will get into more things later. Quicksilver from the get-go is very much so. It's not epic fantasy whatsoever, but it feels like there's an epic plot line happening while at the same time you're getting this really aggressively approachable and middle reading style, a romance that's kind of brewing in the background, one of the coolest magic systems that I've read about in a really long time. The world very, very much so reminds me of Defy the Night, in which you're kind of dropped into this city where they have a super limited resources that's kind of sectioned off into zones, and our main character is kind of like doing her like Aladdin style, running up the walls and stuff and like going all over the place to kind of get out of her little forced area. There is a plague. If you've read Defy the Night, the beginning, I don't know, like 5%, the setup in this world is very, very similar across these books, and then it completely goes to something else. So you're dropped into this world. Our main character, Cyrus, she has a brother. He and she are orphans. They're currently living in the attic of an inn, just kind of like trying to hide away, but they are in a section of this city that is essentially plague ridden. The queen is basically like trying to kill off everyone in this realm because of the plague, and in order to do so, she basically limits their water rations to like 6 ounces a day. They live in practically the desert, so of course nobody's surviving off of that. So crime is very much so prevalent. Everybody's like just trying to figure out how to freaking live, because otherwise they're not gonna live. So you're dropped into very much of this scarcity oriented desert world. Cyrus is currently working under a blacksmith. She's hunting down metal in order to sell so they can, you know, drink water. And I won't tell you exactly what happens from there because I feel like that was such an interesting plot that if you want to read it, I think finding that out for yourself is... I won't take that away from you by any means. So the plot is very much so pick up and go from the get-go, and I freaking loved it. Like, it made you actually want to read and figure out what was happening immediately. So you are immediately invested in this world. And then things kind of change from there. You find out that there is something that's called quicksilver, this pool that turns into like a portal situation, but it's essentially like a sentient metal, and we find out that Cyrus is a alchemist. I was also cracking up because Thea in this book is technically an alchemist, while Cyrus in Quicksilver is also an alchemist. So I was reading about alchemists 2 in a row, and I was just like, I think I am in a good era at the moment. I was thriving, can you tell? I was thriving to the point where I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and binge read, and I really should stop and update people, but I can't. I have to keep going, so I kept going. Worst vlogger ever. Anyways, so again, being as fake as possible, Cyrus, her kind of world changes whenever she finds out all of this information. Some things happen from there, and then she ends up being plot twist, surprise. It's not like everything you know is a lie, but there's more to know about who you are, and surprise. Good luck. And it is so interesting. So in this world, Quicksilver is essentially a sentient metal, and she has the ability to speak with said sentient metal. She has all of this former blacksmith experience, and so she is tasked with creating metals in this world, because if you don't have a talisman, you can't travel through these pools without going crazy. Like our main male character, Kingfisher, he is a main male character, let me tell you. He's one of those that on the outside is just like so gruff and mean, but then the more that you get to know him, you're like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. And he's just baby boy at the end of it all, and it's so fantastic. I genuinely like this book a whole ton because I felt like the romance in the background was so freaking good. These 2 characters, by the end of it all, they were just like... You know how some romances are just written with the we were meant to be together kind of vibe? That's exactly the vibe of this one. But at the same time of this, just like, ugh, I love this romance. You have got a plot in and of itself in this world that's very interesting, but then you also have a magic system that is so interesting. This book was so unique. It was written to where you just wanted to sit down and binge it and read it as fast as possible because you just needed to know what was happening, but it also just felt like a very large story at the same time. So this book, obviously easy peasy, was a 5-star. I desperately went to order the alternate cover edition because it is so chef's kiss stunning. From what I have heard, book 2 is coming out in October of this year, and I cannot wait, absolutely cannot wait to read the rest of the series. I feel like in the romantasy genre, there are a lot of things that are very similar. We all like what we like, so like having more of it is never a bad thing. However, this book was just different, and I was quite literally obsessed. So surprise, surprise, Rachel has great taste. Who would have thought, yet again? And I am so glad that she chose this book for me to read. I'm so glad that I am now up to speed on the hype for this book, and I just cannot wait to see where the heck else and ends up going. So anyways, that is everything that I ended up reading this week. A big fat extra thank you to both Rachel, to Tori, and to Cass, because I swear the likelihood of me actually getting a 5-star this year apparently at all is very, very low. Getting them all in a row, I cannot fathom which universe that we're currently living in, because it's not the universe that I've been previously living in. And I don't know when we like time traveled, realm traveled, whatever you want to call it, but I got my tickets booked for the next one. I am so in this world right now. Anyways, I will link everyone's channels down below. A big fat thank you to all 3 of these lovely people for recommending these books. I was in the absolute best hands this week, and I'm so grateful to everyone who voted on a book for me this week. So go ahead and leave a comment down below, a 5-star that you have read this year so far that you think that I might like, or just a 5-star book that you've read this year, because clearly other people are better at picking out books than I am. So I will take all the recommendations that I can get. Otherwise, if you made it this far into the video and you don't have anything specific, comment the sword or dagger emoji, because I feel like this week has just been a week of weapon rain. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.